Deep in the outer rim of the galaxy, the alien station Veltarik floated in silence. It was a giant, beautiful structure made of silver and crystal-like panels that shimmered in starlight. Thousands of species worked and lived there, believing they were safe under the protection of the Galactic Council. But that peace was about to be broken. A young alien technician named Zira sat at her console. Bored and half asleep, suddenly, her screen blinked. An unknown signal had entered the system. She frowned and tapped a few buttons. The signal wasn't like anything in the Council database. No code, no identification. Just one repeating pulse, slow and steady. It moved too fast, far too fast for any known ship. She called her supervisor, her voice shaking slightly. Commander Varn stepped over. Tall and grumpy, he glanced at the signal and laughed. Probably just a ghost reading. Or an asteroid skipping across sensors, he said with a wave of his hand. But Zira knew better. This signal felt alive. 2 hours later, the signal was closer. Then came a sudden alert. Scout Vessel 88, sent to investigate the source, had vanished. No warning, no explosion, no distress signal, just gone. Now the station was awake, alarms ringing across the corridors. More officers rushed to Zira's station, and data flowed like a river. The signal was still coming, steady and cold, and with it, a whisper spread among the crew, a single message caught on a corrupted relay from a distant scout. Brace yourselves. A human warship is incoming, and destruction is coming. The room went silent. Then someone laughed nervously. Humans? That's impossible. They're weak. Barely spacefaring, said Officer Thaler. But Zira stared at the signal and whispered, Then why does it feel like death is coming closer? The Council dismissed the message at first, across the stars. Leaders scoffed at the idea. Humans had been ignored for centuries, too emotional, too chaotic, too unimportant. They were considered a minor race, barely tolerated in the outer colonies. No one feared them, no one respected them. But now, something had changed. In the next few hours, 3 more scout ships disappeared. Then a trade convoy sent a blurry visual, an enormous black shape passing through a nebula. Too fast to track, too silent to detect. No response to hails, no signs of life, just power, pure and terrifying. Council High Command issued a silent alert. Prepare all fleets near Veltarik. Still, they didn't believe. Still, they waited too long. Zira, watching it all unfold, felt dread grow in her chest. She couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. The signal was getting stronger. It wasn't random anymore. It was locking on. Then, at 0300 station time, the ship arrived. It dropped out of FTL just outside the sensor range. But its shadow was massive. It blocked stars as it approached. It was black, jagged, built like a beast. It carried no colors, no flags, no symbols of peace. Only one word was painted across its front in old human tongue. Vengeance. No one knew what weapons it carried. No one knew how it moved so fast. But everyone felt the same thing when they saw it. Fear. The station trembled as it passed by slowly, silently. The lights flickered, the systems glitched, and some even fainted. Without reason, it wasn't just a ship, it was a message written in steel, flame, and fury. Zira looked out the viewing window. Her eyes wide, she whispered to herself. They came back, and this time, they weren't asking for help. They were here to collect a debt, one the galaxy had forgotten. But humans had not. Not after what was done to them, not after being ignored, abandoned. The trade, the warship floated closer, and every life on Veltarik knew one truth. Brace yourself. A human warship is incoming. And destruction is coming. The High Council chamber on Rither Prime glittered with golden arches and hovering crystals. Elders from over 40 star systems sat in a circle, each wearing robes that showed rank, age, and arrogance. Holograms of the mysterious warship floated above the center table, black, massive, unstoppable. But the chamber was filled not with fear, but with laughter. Humans? Those savages? Chuckled Elder Grom of the Zith Dominion. They still eat plants with their hands and talk about something called coffee, he said, smirking. They have a ship, yes, said Elder Varish, squinting at the image. But it's probably a stolen vessel or a lucky accident, the Supreme Elder, a wise-looking being with glowing skin, slammed his staff. Silence, he commanded. The fact remains 6 scout ships gone, 1 council diplomat vaporized, and a galactic trade. Lane disrupted. This is not a game, he growled, his voice like thunder across water. Yet even then, many didn't believe. They hadn't seen the footage Zira had. They hadn't felt the tremble in the air when the warship passed by. Then came the message. The warship had sent a broadcast in perfect galactic common, but it didn't use words. It showed a video, one by one. The aliens watched as planets were bombarded, not by this human ship, but by pirates, slavers, mercenaries, all under council permission, and on the screen were humans screaming, burning, begging, and the council had turned away. The room went cold. Some elders shifted in shame. Others clenched their fists. But Elder Kryzen of the Varnak military stood up, armor clicking. Enough of this emotional manipulation, he barked. We are the council, the protectors of peace, the rulers of justice. One ship cannot challenge us. He raised his arm and pointed at the warship projection. I propose we destroy it immediately, he declared. Gasps echoed through the room. But Admiral, we don't even know what it's made of, whispered one nervous elder. Kryzen turned, his yellow eyes narrow. Then we find out, send our dreadnoughts, scan it, strike first. The vote passed. By morning, 4 council dreadnoughts, each the size of cities, were dispatched to intercept the ship. Cameras streamed the scene live across the sector. Human warship remained still, floating near a dead moon. It didn't move, didn't fire, didn't blink. Then the dreadnoughts fired, beams of plasma, missiles, kinetic cannons, all at once. Enough firepower to melt a small planet. The warship didn't move. For 5 seconds, the blasts hit its shields, lighting up space like a sun. Then came silence, smoke cleared. And the human ship was still there, untouched. Then it moved, not quickly, not like panic, but slowly, like a predator walking through tall grass. One dreadnought exploded without warning. The second cracked in half from an invisible blade. The third lost power and drifted into a moon's gravity well, crashing like a comet. The fourth tried to run, but was caught by a beam that disassembled it, piece by piece. Atom by atom, no escape pod survived. Back at the council chamber, no one spoke. The warship sent a second video this time, just 6 words, spoken in a calm male voice. We warned you, now we answer, Zira, watching from Veltarix station, whispered under her breath. They waited. They suffered. And now they rise. Across the galaxy, fear replaced pride. No one could deny it now. The humans had come back, and this time, they weren't asking for a seat at the table. They had brought the table, set it on fire, and they were writing their own rules. The ashes of the council fleet still floated near the dead moon when Zira received a private transmission. Encrypted, untraceable, and marked with an old Earth symbol, something forgotten by the galaxy. Her hands trembled as she opened it. It wasn't a message. It was a file that showed the warship's true identity. Its name wasn't just Vengeance. Its full title was Vengeance-class supercarrier, Earth Origin Project Blackstar. And according to the file, it had been built 200 years ago. That couldn't be possible. Nothing that old should be flying, let alone winning battles against modern dreadnoughts. She ran through the data, blinking in disbelief. The ship didn't just carry weapons, it carried something more. Inside were rooms that bent physics, energy cores that violated galactic law. Even stranger, it only had 5 life forms aboard, yet each one carried a heat signature more powerful than an entire station reactor. Then came the real shock. The ship had no communication hub, no known propulsion, no bridge. It was as if the ship itself was alive. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, planets went quiet. No one dared speak against the humans now. Merchants halted trade routes, pirates vanished, and warlords suddenly asked for peace. In just 2 days, the balance of power had shifted, and still. The ship didn't speak, it only watched, hovered, waited. A council spy ship managed to get closer than any other. Its stealth field active, silent as a whisper. But when it got within 100 kilometers, its systems crashed. Inside the cockpit, the crew saw the warship's surface up close for the first time. It wasn't smooth like alien ships. It was scarred, cracked, armored in dark metal forged. Under Earth's dying suns, patches of ceramic, jagged angles, and symbols of lost human colonies. But what froze the spies was this: names. Scratched by hand covering the hull, thousands of names. Names of human settlements burned by pirate raids, ignored by the council. Names of children, women, soldiers, and refugees. This wasn't just a ship, it was a floating grave of human memory. A tomb and a weapon forged from silence. Then something unexpected happened. The warship launched a small probe. No weapons, no aggression. It carried a gift, a single capsule. Landing on the outer rim of Vel Tariq, council engineers surrounded it. Unsure whether to touch it, Zira arrived and demanded. They opened it. Inside was a book, a simple book made of paper, real paper, something ancient and nearly lost. The title read, "The Day We Were Left Behind." Zira flipped through it. Each page written by survivors from Earth's forgotten colonies, stories of how the Galactic Council turned away, how the pirates destroyed families, how diplomats refused to help, and how humans, angry, grieving, broken, swore never to forget, and they didn't. They built in silence, trained in darkness, and returned. Not for peace, but to remind the galaxy that no betrayal stays buried forever. That night, all major networks across the quadrant received the same signal. A voice spoke, soft but unshakable. "We asked for help and we were denied. We begged for peace and were ignored. We gave time and we built strength. Now we have returned, not to ask, but to be heard." For the first time in history, over 24 alien races listened, not because of diplomacy, not because of law, but because one human warship stood over them like a god of wrath. The council scrambled to prepare a response, but deep down, they all knew this wasn't just the rise of a warship. It was the return of a species they thought had faded, and it wasn't just vengeance. It was justice carved into metal and memory. Asterisk, high above the planet Relin V, the sky cracked with light as the human warship moved into orbit. It didn't attack, didn't speak, didn't demand anything. It simply arrived, and its presence alone caused global panic. Crowds fled the cities. Leaders buried themselves in bunkers. Relin V had never seen war in over 100 years. But now, a single ship in the sky felt more dangerous than 1,000. Invasions. The council scrambled to organize a first contact attempt. Maybe, just maybe, there was still a chance to talk, to reason, to offer apology, to prevent more destruction. They chose Envoy Rilna, a skilled diplomat from the peaceful Filari species. She had calmed civil wars, diffused rebellions, and once convinced 2 enemy kings to become friends. If anyone could talk to the humans, it was her. Her small envoy craft launched toward the warship. Her voice gentle, her posture respectful. She broadcast on all known frequencies, in over 30 languages. "Peaceful greetings from the Galactic Council," she said. "We seek only understanding and wish to correct our past wrongs." For 10 seconds, there was silence. Then a response came, but it wasn't words. It was a visual transmission, a replay of her message. Then, cut into it, were images of the exact same words spoken by dozens of human leaders centuries ago, pleading for help, asking for peace, begging the council to intervene. Then came screams, fire, ruins, silence, and finally black. The transmission ended. Then, without warning, the warship activated a single weapon. It wasn't a beam, not an explosion. It was a pulse, a wave of pure energy that touched the envoy's craft like a whisper. The ship dissolved into light, leaving no trace, not even ashes. Everyone on Reland V saw it happen, broadcasted live, from every angle. No sound, no screams, just a soft flash, then nothing. The message was clear. The humans had not come to talk. They had already said all they needed. Now they were done listening. Panic erupted across the council. Emergency meetings, threats of war, evacuation plans, even whispers of surrender. But it was too late for politics. This wasn't about power anymore. It was about memory, about justice, about history demanding a price. Zira, watching from the Veltaric station, sat frozen as more updates came in. The warship had now moved to the next planet in the system, but it didn't fire. It hovered again, watching, waiting, judging, and still, no one knew who was inside. The ship carried 5 life signs, but no names, no faces. Some believed they were AI. Others said they were the last of the Earthborn soldiers. A few even whispered they were not alive at all, but ghosts in armor. Back in the council chamber, Elder Kryzen punched a wall in frustration. How do we fight something that doesn't follow rules? He growled, we've faced empires, we've crushed rebellions, but this is different. The Supreme Elder, silent for hours, finally spoke, his voice low, filled with fear. They came not to talk, not to kill, he said. They came to make us feel what they felt. Forgotten. Just then, every screen in the chamber lit up. Another human message, only 2 lines. You watched us burn. Now you'll watch us rise. The room fell into silence, because somewhere deep in their minds, the council finally understood. They hadn't just failed a species. They had created something far worse than enemies. They had created believers, believers in pain, in purpose, in vengeance, and now the believers had returned, flying a flag no one could ignore. A flag of fire, memory, and steel. Across the galaxy, systems once proud and loud went quiet. The stars themselves seemed to dim as whispers of the human warship spread. It had no fleet, no empire behind it, just a name, vengeance, and a silence more terrifying than war cries. Planets with strong armies began to evacuate their leaders. Trade worlds shut down their ports, worried the ship would arrive without warning. Criminal syndicates vanished. Pirate clans erased their records. Even black market smugglers stopped all movement. Everyone feared the same thing, that they were next. But what shocked the galaxy most was what the warship wasn't doing. It wasn't burning cities. It wasn't hunting civilians. It hovered in orbit, watching, waiting, and only military structures had been destroyed, nothing else. In a small moon colony, a group of alien children were gathered in a school bunker. They watched on a flickering screen as the human ship circled their planet. One little boy asked his teacher, "Will it eat us?" The teacher wanted to say no, but her voice broke before she could lie. In another corner of the galaxy, a noble lord from the Trulkan Empire knelt before a shrine. He whispered, "Forgive us, Earthborn." We knew and stayed silent. He left behind his royal ring, placed it at the base of a carved human figure once mocked, now feared, and in the halls of the Galactic Council, chaos reigned. Factions blamed each other, shouting louder than explosions. Some called for surrender, others for full retaliation, but no one knew how to fight something that didn't respond, that didn't ask, didn't take, didn't explain. Zira stood by the glass walls of Veltaric station, staring into the void. She watched as the warship glided through black space like a ghost. She whispered, "They don't want to conquer. They want us to feel helpless, the same way they once did." Rumors exploded everywhere, that this ship was only the first, that Earth had more hidden, waiting, sleeping beneath oceans or moons. Others claimed Earth was no more, and this was its final voice, a warning sent into the stars so the pain would never be forgotten. In a luxury orbital station, the wealthy elite held a secret meeting. One of them, a council financier, shook with fear. "I invested in those raids on Earth colonies," he confessed. "They paid me to silence the news." The others turned away, ashamed, afraid, because now Money couldn't save them, not from this. Back in a small refugee world, an old human woman, one of the few survivors of the original betrayals, watched the broadcast, her hands weak, her eyes dim, but her voice steady. "They're not here for revenge," she said to the children sitting around her. "They're here for remembrance. They want the stars to never forget what was done to us." The human warship sent another signal, not a message, but an image. It showed thousands of stars, each marked with a red dot, planets, stations, colonies. All once home to humans now gone, forgotten by the Council, erased by silence. The screen faded to black, leaving only one word in bold, unanswered, and then nothing, no sound, no command, no threat, just stillness. Like the deep breath before a storm, the galaxy realized something no one dared say aloud. This wasn't about a battle. This was about guilt, about the weight of actions left buried too long, and that weight now hovered in orbit of every world that once said, "Let the humans suffer." Now the humans had returned, not with armies, but with memories that hurt more than weapons. They weren't destroying the galaxy. They were forcing it to look in the mirror. And for the first time in centuries, the stars themselves seemed ashamed, asterisk in the frozen vaults beneath the Galactic Library on Sora Prime. An old archivist trembled as he unlocked a sealed data crystal. The seal hadn't been touched in over 200 years. It was marked in red, a color used only for records too dangerous to reveal. Now it was time to open the truth. The archivist, named Nolan, inserted the crystal into the reader. A hologram flickered to life, and on the screen appeared something no citizen had seen in generations. Earth. Not the Earth shown in propaganda, but the real one, broken, scarred, left to rot. The file was a collection of recordings, distress calls, journal entries, blurry images. They came from the outer colonies of humanity. Each one had cried for help as pirates burned their cities. Each one had reached out to the Galactic Council, and each one had been ignored. A message echoed in the chamber. "This is Captain Astor Rowan of New Ark Station. We're under attack. Our children are being taken. Our fields burned. If anyone can hear this, please." "We are still human." Nolan fell to his knees, guilt washing over him like cold rain. These messages were buried, classified, deleted from history, not because they weren't real, but because the Council chose convenience over compassion. The truth spread fast. The recordings leaked across the network. Aliens who had once mocked humans now stared at the screen in silence. Some wept, others turned away, ashamed of their people's silence. And while the truth shattered the image of the Council, the warship Vengeance remained still, watching, waiting for the galaxy to see its own sins. On Veltaric Station, Zira gathered with engineers and historians. They studied every part of the ship's image. Finally, one old technician gasped, "The design. It's not just human," he said. "It's a mix of lost colony codes, rebel tech, and something else." "What's something else?" Zira asked. The technician showed her the pattern etched along the hull, ancient Earth languages. But at the center was something older than human technology, pre-contact AI signatures. It meant only one thing. The ship wasn't just a machine. It was part human, part AI, part forgotten pain turned into will, a living memory, an avatar of those who had no graves. Zira turned to her station and played the latest pulse message from the ship. For the first time, it wasn't a threat or silence. It was a story. A boy named Tyan who grew up on a human mining colony. He watched his parents die when raiders struck. He sent a message to the Council, over and over. No one ever answered. He grew up in the ruins, eating insects and dirt. He learned to build from scraps, fight with bare hands. He gathered survivors, orphaned children, broken soldiers, and exiled scientists. They built something in a cave, bit by bit, year by year. Not a home, not a fortress, but a promise. A warship, not to destroy the stars, but to make them remember what they chose to forget. At the end of the story, the screen showed one final image. Tyan, now grown, wearing armor black as midnight, his eyes burning with purpose. He said only one thing: "We are not here to erase. We are here to remind, and the Warship pulsed once more. 5 points of light glowing from within. The 5 survivors, the 5 founders, the 5 hearts of vengeance. Now the galaxy knew. This was not a war. This was a reckoning, not by fleets or generals, but by the forgotten children of silence, and their voices were louder than any weapon ever made. It began without warning. Every screen in the galaxy, on ships, stations, homes, temples, suddenly went dark. Then a single image appeared, the human warship Vengeance, floating alone in a silent starfield. A voice spoke, not loud, not angry, but calm, steady, and full of weight. It was the voice of Tyan, survivor of the forgotten colonies. But now he wasn't just a man. He was a symbol, a memory turned into motion. We never wanted war. We asked for help, and were left to die. Now you listen, not because we begged, but because we bled. You called us weak, savage, emotional, but we endured the cold while you turned away. We raised our dead with no names, no flags, no funerals. And from their bones we built this. The image shifted, showing cities destroyed. Orphaned children, council officers turning off their coms. Then slowly, it showed what those humans became. Warriors, engineers, survivors, builders of impossible machines, not monsters. Not conquerors, just a people who refused to be forgotten. Tyan continued, this ship is not revenge. It is remembrance. It carries the weight of those you erased. And we ask only one thing. The voice paused. Every world leaned in. Even the council chamber held its breath. Say their names. Write them in your history. In your books, in your skies. Not as enemies, but as those you failed. Let your children remember ours. Let the silence end here. And then, the ship did something no one expected. It turned around. Its engines powered up. But no weapons were activated. The warship began to leave. No demands, no attacks, just departure. In its wake, it left a final gifted data crystal. Inside were the names of every human lost during the Age of Silence. Each one recorded, one by one. Thousands, maybe millions, written by hand, by survivors who refused to let them vanish. Zero watched the warship disappear into the stars. Her voice trembling, she whispered, they didn't want power. They wanted to be remembered. Across the stars, the council finally moved, not with ships, but with truth. They opened the records. They told the real story. Monuments were built, names carved into stone and crystal. A galaxy finally honoring the humans it once turned away from. Years later, children would visit those monuments. They would touch the names and ask, who were they? And someone would always answer, they were the ones who survived silence and taught the stars to listen. And in the dark corners of deep space, a single warship still drifted, watching, always watching, but it no longer needed to fire. Because its voice had been heard, and in that silence came peace, the end.